Okay, so we got the oil cooler in last night. Hard pipes are all on. It's time to hang the exhaust manifold, EGR valve, and then we'll get the new EGR cooler in it. That's coming up. Okay, so to install the manifold, I took bolts, cut the heads off, and I installed them in the top hole, hang gaskets on them, and slide the manifold over top of them. And then install the lower bolts, snug them up, take these back out, and then reinstall new bolts, twist spacers, and everything else. That's the quick and easy way of doing it. Okay, so you can see I got the manifold back in. I got the bottom bolts are in. Most of them are semi-snug. That'll hold the gaskets in place. So you can go ahead and pull these studs back out that I used to line it up and get it in. And we can put bolts in there, torque all that together, and then we can get the EGR valve back on. But the EGR valve, you want to make sure that you run a tap through these holes. They're a blind hole, and any rust or crap gets caught up in there, and it makes the bolts, difficult to get out the next time you got to work on it. So hopefully you don't have to, but these things do fail. So you may have to come back at one point or another and replace that valve again. And when you do that, if you didn't clean those bolts, take that few seconds, you're going to be stuck. So it pays dividends to make sure you do the extra step and clean those out. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and clean these holes. We're going to tap through them and repair them. Now, I use Marvel Mystery Oil for my cutting oil. And we aren't really doing a lot of cutting here, but still going to use it. So a little light coat. Wasn't very happy how that cleaned out, so we're going to get a little more precise with it. Okay, so I got those tapped out. I'm going to rinse the cuttings out. Okay, so we've got the EGR valve there reinstalled. Well, it's not installed, it's hanging there by the bolts. But we got this special tool that gets this oil supply line tightened up, so that you don't smash it. It requires a line wrench, but there's not enough room for a line wrench, so they created this monstrosity to get the job done, and we'll get that guy reinstalled, and we'll move on to the EGR cooler we have now. Okay, so we got the EGR valve reinstalled, oil supply lines reconnected, oil drain lines reconnected. We're ready to put the EGR cooler back in. However, don't forget your turbo drain line. If you forget to put that in before you put your EGR cooler in, you should make a whole lot more work for yourself. Don't make that mistake. I've done it myself. It's a difficult one to recover. You got to take everything back out, put it in, put it all back in. So that's next. Okay, so we got the EGR valve installed. Oil supply lines reconnected. Oil drain lines reconnected. She's torqued the spec. The next step is to get the water outlet piping, or inlet piping to the water pump, I'm sorry, and get it reinstalled. And just don't forget to put your O-ring back in this neck, and the O-ring back in the neck of the pipe itself here. Forgetting those, she'll leak like a sieve. Okay, so we get the water inlet and outlet piping reinstalled here. Got the injector cooler stands back in. We're gonna put the lower radiator adapter on. Got the coolant bypass hose installed. The coolant temp sensor plugged back in. Next step is the cooler itself. Okay, so as you can see, we've got the EGR cooler back in. You got the U-pipe in. With the clamps on it. That's all done. The straps in. Got to tighten up the jam nuts yet. We've got the radiator adapter down here. Lower radiator adapter, I'm sorry, reconnected. Tighten those jams and we'll get the other coolant lines installed. And then start thinking about putting that turbo on. So, here we go. Okay, so we're going to put this coolant line back in. And this one is the one that's really hard to get out and also hard to get in. But if you look, and you can see some of it here, I'm sure. There's just a lot of corrosion in there. It's fairly significant. So what we're going to do is clean that up so it'll go back together. And we'll protect it with some Never See so that it won't corrode like that again. See how easy that went together? It's all a matter of getting it clean. I figured that's what it was. Get the EGR and Venturi here reinstalled. You stick this in here. Yep. Get the EGR to Venturi boot and clamps tightened up. That's the truth. Stay it. coolant line's hooked up, but pull this O-ring out. Alright. Alright, so the coolant line's in, EGR coolant line's in, EGT or EGR Venturi's back in, EGR differential's plugged in, EGR temp's plugged in. We get some zip tying and some prettying up to do, but about to move on to the turbo. Okay, so when we're putting the turbo in, you can kind of cheat a little bit and pre-install these two bolts, spacers, and the gasket. That way when you put the turbo in, you just push it up against here and slide it on, because the back two bolts in the turbo, or holes in the turbo, are slotted, so they'll slide right over that without any problem. So here we go. So you got to get that oil drain line way back in there, stuck in that hole in the bottom of the turbo adapter. Slide that in and slide your slots of those two back bolts. There she goes, all the way home. Okay, so the turbo's in, it's mounted, all four bolts are in. The oil return line is placed. We still have the coolant line, return line, coolant supply line, and then we have electrical connections. Then we have the actuator coolant lines to do, and then we can knock that one off the list. We got to move on. Then we can move on to diffuser, 7th injector, adapter pipe, and then ancillary things, air intake, little wires, lines, brackets, fenders, all that stuff, and put the coolant back in. So we're getting there. Okay, in preparation for installing the 7th injector here on the diffuser pipe and the diffuser pipe adapter to the flex pipe and all that stuff, I thought it'd be a good time to take a look at this dosing injector, or the 7th injector, and look at this and see how plugged up it is. And this one here is very, very plugged. In fact, the soot in this, because the EGR cooler was leaking, is so sticky, or was. It is so hard. By the time I got it all chipped out of there, I would probably have destroyed the pintle on the dosing injector. So it's really not worth the effort of putting this back in, putting the whole truck back together, taking it outside, firing it up, let it go through a service regen to find out that it won't get hot enough because this is too plugged. And then let it cool back down, drain the coolant, dig everything out of the way, get this out, put a new one in, just put it all back together again, and take it and do the same test again. You know, we're only talking about 130, 150 bucks for one of these from the dealer. Cheaper aftermarket. It's really not worth the effort. So we're just going to go ahead and replace it. As an example, this is what it should look like if it were new. Obviously, even if it was in good serviceable condition, it wouldn't be shiny, but it should be cleaner than this one. So there you go. That's why we're going to replace it with a new one. Alright, so we got the 7th injector installed, we got the diffuser installed, and the adapter to the flex is installed. We got the oil supply line to the turbo installed, and our next step is going to be, we also got the brake air compressor intake tube installed. It was just sitting up here on top. And then we got a clamp left to do, kind of up here on the EGR crossover tube up on top, a hose clamp. Some coolant lines to put on. And then all the little ancillary stuff, zip ties. We're getting there. Should have it done tonight yet. Alright, so we got the high pressure side of the turbo lined back in. It also includes the recirculation valve and the dump pipe back into the intake of turbo. So we recirculate and build heat during the regen. So get this guy installed and keep moving. Alright, so get the air cleaner filter housing reinstalled here. There we go. That's the problem. Okay, so coolant's back in, hood latch support's back on, all the hoses, wires, accessories are all tied back up, filter binder is reconnected. The next step is tire, bumper corner, fender liner, and side off.